Dobro večer vsem še z moje strani. Good evening to everybody from my side as well. As Nina already mentioned, I'm going to present the topic of seasonal space use of loggerhead sea turtles in Adriatic Sea that I decided to title Should I Stay or Should I Go? I'm not going to sing you the popular song because I don't know it really well, but you will hear a story about the research that we are doing and some findings that we got from our studies. The loggerhead sea turtle, a little bit about the species. So this is a secondary aquatic animal, which means that it evolved from land to the sea, and it's still air breathing, which means that the animals have to come to the surface to breed, but otherwise it is adapted to marine life, which can be seen in a hydrodynamic body. You can see on the photo down on the left. They are dorsoventrally flattened, so they have a hydrodynamic body, and they have flippers so they can swim efficiently in the sea. Another important fact is that the species is ectothermic, which means that the body temperatures and the physiological processes depend on environmental temperature, or maybe better said, changes in the environmental temperature. Also, this is a long-living species. Individuals can live to 60 years and more, and it's characteristic for them that they have late reproductive maturity, so they start to reproduce when they are 20 to 30 years old, depending on the population. Also, this is a cosmopolitan species, which means that it has more or less a global distribution, as you can see in the map below. And you can also see that we have a population in the Mediterranean Sea. And also, it is a charismatic species, which means that people generally like it, and therefore it can be used as a flagship species. So conserving this particular species can help us conserve others that inhabit the same habitats or the same areas in the environment. If we look at the loggerhead sea turtle life cycle, it's quite complex. It includes 3 different habitats, and the life of a loggerhead turtle starts on the nesting beach, where adult female lay approximately 100 eggs in a nest, and roughly in 2 months, the hatchlings arise from these nests, and then they start to go into the sea, and they swim into the oceanic habitats, where they grow, and when they are big enough, strong enough, they move to coastal habitats, which are shallower, and they can then use these habitats for foraging, because they are big enough, strong enough, so they can dive to the sea bottom. And this is a period when they are mostly growing, and when this 20 to 30 years pass, as I said before, they become reproductive, they become mature, and then they move to reproductive habitats. They mate, and then the adult females, they dig the nests, and then both, or mostly females, but also males, then return to coastal habitats. And these are also known as reproductive migrations. If you wonder how big different life stages are, the hatchlings that come out of the nests, they are 4 to 5 centimeters long, so their carapace is 4 to 5 centimeters long, and their weight is 15 to 17 grams. The post-hatchlings, depending on the population, but usually this phase lasts until their body size reaches 25 centimeters in length, and they are 2 to 3 kilos. They weigh 2 to 3 kilos. Then the juveniles, their size goes from 25 to 75 centimeters, also depending on the population. And the adults are bigger than 70 centimeters in curved carapace length, and their weight is bigger than 50, bigger than 60 kilos, can be up to 100. So they are quite big animals. If we look at the situation in the Mediterranean Sea, the major nesting sites are located in Greece. The closest to us is on Corfu. Some of the biggest are on Zakynthos Island, Kefalonia, and on Crete. And the other two places with the major nesting sites are the coasts of Turkey and northern coast of Cyprus. And what happens after the nesting events, we can see on the map here on the left. So the star represents Zakynthos nesting site, and these animals were tracked with satellite trackers, and you can see that a proportion of these animals went to this part of the Mediterranean, and another proportion went straight to Adriatic Sea. Very directional movements, and most of the animals went to the Northern Adriatic Sea. And using this kind of data, we also know that Adriatic Sea is one of the most important foraging sites in Mediterranean. Foraging means sites that animals use for feeding, so they are finding food in mostly the whole Adriatic Sea. And some more information about density of sea turtles, loggerhead sea turtles in Adriatic Sea. It's shown on this map. You can see that one location where they are present is the Southern Adriatic Sea, and Northern Adriatic Sea has the highest densities that are estimated up to 130, 140 animals per 100 square kilometers. One important thing to mention is also that loggerhead sea undergoes an ontogenetic habitat shift. This means that they shift from feeding in deep oceanic waters, and they start to feed in the neritic areas. And the oceanic waters are located in the Southern Adriatic Sea, and this is where post-hatchlings, so the small turtles, can be found. And after shift to neritic, juveniles and adults are mostly found in the areas of Northern Adriatic Sea. So what do they eat, the juveniles and the adults? On this graph, you can see what are the major taxa that were found in their diet. So crustaceans are crabs, anthozoans are sea anemones, and bivalves and gastropods, these are shells and snails. And you can see that the blue, the green, and the yellow portion, they represent in total around 75%. And you can also find these three taxa in a single animal, which is a hermit crab. So a crab that is inhabiting a snail's shell, and on top of this, usually some symbiotic sea anemones grow, and this is the favorite food of the loggerheads in the Northern Adriatic Sea. And another perspective on how this region looks like. So this is the depth. I already mentioned that the southern part is very deep, and these depths can go they can go even to 1100, 1200 meters. And this is the area with true oceanic conditions. And this is where the small turtles can be found. And if we look at the Northern Adriatic Sea, where the bigger animals can be found, these depths are more shallow, so they don't fall below 100 meters, which is within well within the ability of the animals to dive. So they can dive easily to 50, 60 meters, even to 100 meters. And another property of the Adriatic Sea is that the temperature change during the seasons. And this figure is showing the winter temperatures, which we can see that especially in the northern part, they can fall to, on average, 8.5 in February, January. And I told you in the beginning that sea turtles are ectothermic organisms influenced by the temperature. So this is an interesting oceanographic characteristic that we can kind of investigate the influence on their movements, on their behavior. So what do we know so far? We have some indications that the animals move southward, but this come mostly from indirect observations from bycatch analysis, which means that basically in the winter months, the researchers didn't find turtles in the fishing net, let's say in the Gulf of Trieste or outside of Istrian Peninsula. And they found at the same time turtles caught around the island of Lošinj and further south. So this is an indication that turtles kind of move southwards in the winter. And there are some tracking studies on a small number of individuals that also indicate that sea turtles move southwards during the winter. One example is this one in the middle. You can see that the animal was released in September and it moved to the border of the Southern Adriatic, and then it came back in May next year. But the biggest knowledge gap was actually for the small juvenile turtles, so for the animals that have size lower than 45 centimeters. So the length of their carapace is lower than 45 centimeters. And this is where our study comes in. So what we aim to do was examine seasonal space use of juveniles and subadult loggerhead turtles, use this information to see what are the implications for conservation. So in terms of overlap with industrial fisheries in Adriatic Sea, and also inclusion of areas that the turtles use in marine protected areas, Natura 2000 sites, and fisheries restricted areas, and also evaluate the effects of temperature seasonality on the diving patterns. So how the temperature affects the diving of the individuals. So we did that using satellite and GPS telemetry, and it looks like that. So on individuals, so on turtles, we attached different kinds of devices, released the animals into the sea, and then we received some data back. And I have some video showing this, which I'm going to play and then try to explain a little bit more how these devices actually work. Okay, don't know what just happened. Okay, so what I wanted to show you with this video was actually the role of these devices that are used for satellite tracking. You could see that there was also an example of the turtle, but also other animals. So these devices, they are meant to do at minimum two things. The first thing is that we need locations. So these devices, they connect to the satellites, and they kind of, based on connecting to the satellite multiple times, they kind of try to define where these locations are of the animals. And the other thing is we need to obtain this data. So the other function of this device is to send the data back to the satellites, and then these centers kind of decipher the actual locations, and they also have some algorithms that enable us to get better quality locations. So just a short description of the tag types that we use. So the tag that you see on this photo, they are called pop-ups because they detach from the animal and then they come to the surface and transmit the data. I also put in bold that they had pressure sensors, and this pressure sensor is kind of measuring the pressure, and by this we know the depth at which the animal was. The duty cycle, this is the cycle in which the device turns on and off, was optimized for battery longevity, so that the tags work as long as possible. And we equipped 10 turtles with this type of devices. They were equipped between August and October, and year better not to say which one it was because it's 10 years ago already. So this type of devices were attached on small juveniles, so with curved carapace length on average 35.5, and the range was 29 to 41 centimeters. And they worked quite well. On average, they were working for 160 days, and we got 115 locations per animal on average. The second tag type, they are called platform terminal transmitters, PTTs in short. And you can see that the attachment method is different in this case. These devices, they are glued on top of the carapace. And during this study, we were using, or my colleagues were using this nice pink color. So we could have also seen the turtles from the airplane with this shiny color used for the glue. So there were two different duty cycles also used for battery optimization. And 10 turtles were tagged. They were by-caught and released between 19 January and 1st of March. This was in 2015. And these were bigger animals, so 51 centimeter curved carapace length on average. The smaller one, 47 centimeters, and the bigger one, 74. And they worked also very well, so 220 days on average, 1,000 locations and more on average per animal. And two of these tags worked really, really well, or they stayed attached for long enough, and they provided data for almost 1.5 years. and you will see these results later on as well. Okay, and the third tag that we used were the GPS GSM tags that were developed by our colleagues as a part of Life Euro Turtles project. These tags were always on because they had a solar cell, as you can see on the picture, and the battery was rechargeable, also had a pressure sensor. We equipped 7 turtles, also by caught or recovered at sea, and this was more recent, so November 2020 and January 2021. And these turtles were actually the biggest, so on average 71 centimeters, range 52 to 86. And they also worked quite well, 150 days on average and 80 locations per animal. And just one thing that I would also like to point you to are these 2 pins on the tag. All 3 types have this, and these are saltwater switches. So basically the tags are smart in a way that they are turned off all the time when they are in the sea, because in the water they cannot connect to the satellites. So the tag turns on only when the water is kind of the circuit, electrical circuit is broken, and this happens when the animal comes fully out of the water. And this is also another example on how to kind of increase the battery life, so the battery works as long as possible. Okay, just a quick word about telemetry and diving data that we get back in this kind of studies. So Argos, or satellite location data, it needs processing because the locations come with errors that range between 300 meters up to 5 kilometers and more. And you can see that some location classes, they have quite big location errors. So these ones are used only if there is lack of high quality classes, location classes. GPS is very accurate, so usually the accuracy of position estimate is 150 to 200 meters. And for the diving data, what we get back is most often duration of dives, so how long the animal was diving, how long it was on the surface, diving depth, and also some transmitters are able to distinguish between different dive types. And if you look a little bit further into seasons in Adriatic, so for our study, we decided to analyze data according to bi-monthly seasons. And these 3 plots show you November, December 1st, January, February 2nd, March, April 3rd. And you can see that in autumn, Adriatic is cooling from north to the south. In the winter, so January, February, let's say deep winter, it is really cold. And in March, April, it already starts to warm slowly. And then the other 3 bi-monthly seasons, so May, June the 1st, July, August the second graph, and September, October the 3rd. In May, June, already warming slowly. July, August is the warmest period. Temperatures go also up to over 25 degrees. And then September, October, it's when the cooling of the Adriatic starts. And according to this, we then have different kinds of space use quantifications, and we decided to use home range method. So in short, home range is the area in which an animal lives and moves on a periodic basis. And they are most often quantified as core use areas and general use areas. So core use areas, like the 50% of the home range, the areas that the animals use most often, and general use areas, like the wider areas which the animal the animals use. Of course, there are multiple evaluation methods possible. I'm not going to go in any details about this. Let's just say that we use this method, which kind of doesn't base the home range estimate on locations only, but includes the relocations, so the time series, how the animal moved through the environment, and it provides a better space use quantification compared to just taking into consideration the locations alone. And we delineated the seasonal home ranges according to temperature changes that I showed you in the previous slide. Okay, and now coming to back to the title of the presentation. So did the animals stay or did they go? Let's look. You will see two animations. So remember, the PTTs are the types that are glued on the back, and the pop-ups are attached to with the tether to the animal. And let's see what happened. Oh no, the animations are not working. What now? Okay. So the PTTs, the animals with PTTs were released on Lošinj Island. And when it will restart, you will see they were released in January, February. You see what happened with their movements. And you can see the green one and the yellow one are the two individuals that were tracked for 1 year and a half. So you can already see some patterns, especially with these two individuals. So now look at the smaller ones. They were released in Piran and Savudrija in October mostly. And you can also see some patterns of their movement in space. So this is how they move through space. And these are the actual results from the home range analysis. And these results are for individual animals. So these maps are showing different periods. So different color denote different periods. The blues are associated to the colder period. Orange and red are associated to more warm period. And the January is this turquoise color, March, April, light blue, and this is like green, blue mix for November, December. And this individual, this is one of the individuals that provided data for a year and a half. So we got 7 bi-monthly and 2 warm season estimates. And you can see that this animal, throughout the year, it displays a very stationary pattern. So basically, regardless of the season, it's moving somewhere around Lošinj and the tip of the Istria. We also can say that this animal has a very high site fidelity through the seasons, and the verdict for this animal could be stay. Then the second animal that provided data for 1 year and a half approximately, so for 7 bi-monthly and 1 warm season, displayed a vagrant pattern, which means it moved around a lot, low site fidelity through the seasons. And we can say for this animal, go 2 times. So after the release in February, it went straight to the south. And also after the summer season, you can see November, December, it started moving southward, and January through April, it actually moved out of the Adriatic. So definitely go twice. But however, it apparently liked the Northern Adriatic, so it came back in spring. It's very interesting. It's not seen here very well, but throughout the July-October period, this animal stayed in like a dot here within like 5 square kilometers for 4 months. So basically it didn't move around at all. So in the summer period, it seems this animal liked the Northern Adriatic a lot, but in the winter, it moved southwards twice. Then more examples. Now we are talking about juveniles from 47 to 74 centimeters curved carapace lengths. And note that these maps show 6 different animals. So each tag ID represents one individual. And what we can see on the plot here noted with the red, these animals, after the release, they kind of preferred the areas where they were, and they mostly stayed within the Northern Adriatic. And these 3 individuals, after the release, they didn't go in the same pattern to the end of the Adriatic, but they went south and they kind of came back or moved further to the north in the southern period. So we can also say they went. Some other examples, and these are now small juveniles, 29 centimeters curved carapace length and less than 41. And we can also see here, noted with the red, 2 individuals for which we can say they didn't really stay, but stay-ish, let's say. They moved a little bit towards the south, but towards the south in the winter, but still stayed close to the, not close to the release location, but stayed in the Northern Adriatic Sea. And then we have 2 individuals that were vagrant. So this one, after the release in October, you can see in the first plot, went south and then continued to go south in January and March. But again, came back in spring. You can see that the last locations were actually very close to Piran and Savudria. And the last example here, this individual also roamed the Central Adriatic during January-March period. And after that, the tag stopped working, and we don't know what happened in May and June and so on. So a little bit more about the actual sizes of these home ranges. So different colors, they still denote different seasons. And we can see that 50% home ranges, they can be, as small as a couple of square kilometers, and as big as this individual really stands out, like 4,000 square kilometers. And these are just the core use areas. And 95% home ranges, so the wider areas that the animals use, they can also range from a couple of square kilometers, but in March-April periods, 2 individuals kind of used over 20,000 square kilometers in the Adriatic Sea. However, just to put this into perspective, in marine environment, home ranges of 10,000 square kilometers and less, so everything that is below this line would be considered as localized home ranges. So even though the numbers are quite big in marine environment, the home ranges that we estimated for our turtles, they can still be considered as localized home ranges. And this is for each individual sea turtle. Then we also kind of looked at how these home ranges look like if we group them all together. And we can see the pattern that, as already said before, in January, February, we can see that this northern part of North Adriatic is basically emptied, so animals did not really use it. There are a couple of individuals that were moving slowly southwards in this period, but most of them, they already kind of went south enough to avoid the lowest temperatures in the winter. And also another pattern that kind of stands out is this March-April period, when they spread around and used like really a big portion of the Northern Adriatic, of the Central Adriatic, and some individuals roamed also in the South Adriatic. And it's also interesting to see that the tags that worked also into the July-October period, the animals kind of moved northwards. So basically they came back to the Northern Adriatic, and this makes perfect sense. It's shallow, so it's easier for them to dive to the sea bottom and feed on the food that Northern Adriatic is providing to them. Okay, and a couple of things to associate with the home ranges. So we looked at how industrial fisheries in Adriatic Sea looks like, and you can see that it is divided in the same bi-monthly periods, and the darker colors, they denote more fishing effort in these particular locations. And this is the data called AIS data, which is the automatic identification system. And this is required for all fishing vessels with overall length of more than 15 meters in the European Union. So basically, the fishing vessels, they need to report where they are. So this data is available for 10 years. And we can see that there's a lot of fishing effort, especially in Italian territorial waters, but also in the high seas in between. We can also see that in January, February, the effort is kind of a little bit more limited to the coasts, and there's also no fishing effort in the deep waters of Northern Adriatic and this deeper part of the Central. Whilst in warmer period, the effort is kind of spread out throughout the whole Adriatic Sea, with the exception of the Southern Adriatic. And if we look at how much effort actually falls within the home ranges, so within November, December, the home range, under the 50% home ranges, the estimate is around 33,000 fishing hours and 220,000 fishing hours in 95% home ranges. In January, February, this number is bigger, so around 70,000 under 50% home ranges and 470,000 hours per square kilometer within 95%. And these numbers then become really big in March, April, and May, October. March, April, because the home ranges are kind of spread out the most. And if we look, the biggest number is actually more than 1 million fishing hours. That's kind of overlap with the 95% home ranges in the May-October period. And also one important note, this data for fisheries, this does not include effort for small-scale fisheries effort. So for smaller boats that are not required to have these trackers. So on top of industrial fisheries, there's also small-scale fishery that is being done in the Adriatic Sea, and we don't know how much within the home ranges that we estimated. And if you look at the marine protected areas, there are two types, so Natura 2000 sites and marine protected areas. They are mostly coastal, especially marine protected areas. Natura 2000 sites, there are some that cover quite some marine area. This one in the central Isole Tremiti, I think, and then a couple in Croatia, in Western Istria, Cres Lošinj, Vis, and this is a bunch of islands in the name of the Natura 2000 site. So there are quite some of areas, but they mostly don't cover a lot of marine areas, and not all of them are designated and include sea turtles under their conservation. And then also there are two fisheries restricted areas, which are by default protected areas for sea turtles, because fisheries is banned at least in a couple of months per year. So these are Bari Canyon in the south and Jabuka Pit in the central Adriatic. And another thing that we looked at, but I'm not going to really present the results, are proposed conservation areas. These are based on aerial surveys that I showed you at the beginning. So these are kind of proposed areas that could be conserved based on the number of turtles that are present there. So if we look at the sizes of these marine protected areas, as I said, you can see these bars here left of all the colored lines. So basically everything that is left of this turquoise line are the marine protected areas and Natura 2000 sites that are smaller than median estimated home range sizes, which means that there's only a small number of these marine protected areas that are large enough to include majority of the space that we kind of estimated that the sea turtles use. And if we look at March, April, median, there are only two, so Lastovo and Mljet Channel and Isole Tremiti, that are bigger than the median home range size estimate. And this Isole Tremiti, this is a specially protected areas that is actually protected for birds, not for sea turtles. So it's not including sea turtles in their protection. Okay, just two bits of information more. So how much are the home ranges actually included? So we saw that they're not really big enough, and also their coverage of home ranges is not really big. So Natura 2000 sites and marine protected areas, they cover a maximum of 4.3% of core areas and a minimum of 0. So basically nothing of core use areas in July, October is covered by Natura 2000 sites and marine protected areas. Regarding general use, so these are the wider areas, maximum of 4.7% in July, October, and minimum inclusion is 0.2% in November, December. And regarding the fisheries restricted areas, so they include maximum 2.5% of core use areas in November, December, and 0 overlap with home ranges in all 4 other periods. So basically 4 periods per year that we estimated home ranges, they don't overlap with sea turtle home ranges, with fisheries restricted areas. And it's a very similar pattern for the general use areas. So maximum 3.6% and 0% in 4 other periods. So we have some protected areas and fisheries restricted areas, but in terms of inclusion of where the turtles are in different periods of the year, they don't seem to be very good placed. Okay, and just a couple of slides on how the low temperatures affect diving. This is still quite preliminary, so I'm going to be short. On this graph, there's a pattern, one pattern that we observed. So this particular individual had a very short dive times. So the top plot is showing the dive duration, and this duration was like very short, shorter than 30 minutes most of the time. And the dives were very shallow. So if we look at the dive depths in January, February, and March, April, so they don't go, this animal didn't dive to more than 10 meters, maybe 15, 20 meters in March, April. And this also means that this animal did not dive to the sea bottom, because this last box plot is showing the bottom depth. So basically all the dives were above the shallowest water where the animal was in both cases. So basically it spent the whole winter swimming in the upper layers of the water column. So this is one pattern that we observed, and the other pattern is something that would be actually more expected to see in the turtles. So you can see that these dives were very long, so up to 500 minutes, which is approximately 8 hours. Not all, but like more than half of the dives were longer than 4 hours and up to 8 hours. And these dives were deeper. So this animal dived in January, February, up to 50, 60 meters. And it's also interesting that this is the depth of the location at the locations where this animal was. So the second pattern kind of indicates that the animal stayed on the sea bottom for a prolonged time during the January, February, when the temperatures are low, and these low temperatures kind of affect their behavior. Okay, and with this, I came to the end of my presentation.